All right, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It's out. You've all seen it, right? Well, I suppose if you're going to see it, you've seen it by now, which isn't even necessarily true. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that spoiler warning right now. If you haven't seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, or you somehow avoided the mid-credit scene that's floating around YouTube, probably shouldn't watch this. And I'm going to go ahead and say that you've been warned. That's the spoiler warning because that's the spoiler, right? I should call this Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So let's talk about that mid-credit scene. It's why I played it down so much in my review. It's like, yeah, mid-credit scene. It's good. You should stay for it. Because I wanted to be like, holy fuck, that mid-credits scene. It's wow. It made the movie, actually. I was like, the movie, and then walked out of the theater like, yeah, that mid-credits scene, though, that made the movie. If I say that in my spoiler-free review, people watching be like, so Spider-Man. You're saying Spider-Man, right? Because that's what that means. You're gonna get that excited for anything else. I kind of had to play that down. But before I get to that, there are other things worth talking about in the spoiler territory. You know, Shriek gets smashed and crushed to death by a bell. That happens. Maybe she lived, because you know the rule, unless you see the body, they're not dead. But that's some pretty heavy iron falling from some pretty high altitude, creating some pretty intense velocity, which creates immense pounds of pressure. And that landed on her. So I'm gonna say, yeah, she might be dead. Also, Carnage spins around like the Tasmanian devil spins around and creates a tornado vortex. That happens too. This is me talking. Actually, one of the spoilers that I wanted to talk about, I think I recorded myself talking about it and then editing, I was like, let's not talk about that. Was how Cletus Cassidy and the Carnage symbiote, they weren't working together, you know, they didn't have that synergy. They didn't have symbiosis. It all starts when Shriek screams and Carnage like, shut your mouth. So anyhow, there are some scenes in here involving Shriek where Cletus Cassidy's like, dude, I'm a good boyfriend. Stop, you're hurting her. So they didn't have that symbiosis. It's not like the two of them would bond so closely that he doesn't use the term we. He uses the term I. You know, comic book shit, which is a really funny thing that it's like both of these movies kind of gloss over that. The fact that him saying we is a very important thing, which I get, it sounds like a mundane detail, but it's not a mundane detail. It's a very important detail. Eddie Brock, Venom, they say we because they're not bonded as one unit. Eddie Brock's able to keep that symbiote at bay. It's like, no, you're using my body. I'm kind of the boss here, but we can work together. We can both get what we want, which in the movies, the Venom symbiote doesn't get what he wants. He can't eat brains, kind of like he was promised at the end of the first movie. So I get there's going to be tension, which looks like it's story-based, but more feels like the writers being like, that's rated R content, and we just can't have that. And the last movie broke $1 billion, and it was PG-13. We're not changing up the formula, so sorry, no brain meals. But Carnage bonds, and he says I, because Carnage is like, I don't even give a fuck. We're both on the same page. Yeah, let's kill people. I am Carnage, because that's what I make. It's like in watching the movie, you wouldn't know that, but there's always a very important thing between the two characters, an important distinction. It kind of does a flyby. So in the end of this movie, Venom, the symbiote, they're all sitting around on vacay, and Eddie Brock's like, hey, show me a glimpse of what you've seen and experienced in the universe. And Venom's like, all right, but it might melt your brain, but here we go. And then you see this ripple, this like boom, this light ripple happen from the horizon, and it hits them. It looks like they're in another place. Feels like they're in another place. Then on TV, you see J. Jonah Jameson, and he's talking about, oh, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man's wanted for murder. And while the image of Tom Holland Spider-Man's on the screen, Venom goes up to the TV, he's like, this guy, and he licks the screen while Spider-Man's on screen. You're like, that's such a Venom thing to do. Granted, Tom Holland Spider-Man's still in high school, making that a little creepier than it needs to be, but that's such a Venom thing to do, licking the screen. So that's where we are now with it. It was this huge shock. I mean, you could feel the whole theater be like, oh my God. Yeah, that's sweet. Maybe I'm just projecting because that's what I thought. There's some pretty good implications, some pretty great possibilities that could happen. I mean, one, we could exist in a world where it's an alternate reality, an alternate universe. So Cletus Cassidy could not be dead because he dies in this movie, which is actually where they saved their F-bomb card. And I love the use of it, you know? It's like Venom has Cletus Cassidy by the throat and he's like, I just wanted to be your friend. Again, showing how the Carnage symbiote is way more hardcore and evil than Cletus Cassidy. I get we're in this phase of like, well, let's understand the villains, but fuck it, he's Cletus Cassidy. You don't need to. And while he's giving his sob story, Venom just goes, fuck this guy, eats his head. Like, that was funny. Granted, I was immediately met with the feeling of, wait, so Cletus Cassidy's dead? No possibility of maximum carnage. And so that's one possibility, is that Cletus Cassidy is alive. he can somehow get the Carnage symbiote again, or from his standpoint, for the first time, which makes this whole movie feel like, oh, it's like a trial run for Carnage. If they go that route, this could be the last we ever see of Cletus Cassidy. I don't know. But okay, Venom wants to go after Spider-Man now for reasons unknown. I don't know. It's just kind of love at first sight, I suppose. But he wants to go after him. So it could be a reimagining of the black suit Spider-Man arc for Spider-Man, in which case it's like that would have to be a very Spider-Man-centric movie if they're doing the black suit thing with this Spider-Man. Or it's another Spider-Man movie after No Way Home, or maybe it is No Way Home. Maybe Venom's going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home. But there are already a lot of irons in that fire already. I'm already kind of concerned about it. Like, I'm excited, but you know, you can't help but be like, it's a lot of characters, a lot of plot lines, a lot of things happening in that movie. So Venom will either be a cameo in that movie, like Spider-Man was in Civil War, which wouldn't really feel so fulfilling for me. So maybe they're just setting up for another Spider-Man movie in which Spider-Man and Venom meet, or another Venom movie. However they want to do it. Regardless, the most exciting thing about it is if Venom even latches on Spider-Man for a second, which again, I could totally see happen, for Spider-Man gets it like, yeah, no, go away, parasite, go away, you germ. Then Venom's like, oh, that didn't work out. I don't know how they're gonna do it. It could be for a second, could be for an entire movie. Regardless, if the symbiote goes on Spider-Man and goes back to Eddie Brock, it could be a case of, oh, hey, spider symbol on the chest, and I shoot webs now because I'm Venom and that's what I do. If for nothing else, you know that's part of the roundtable discussion, because for every movie you have to have a different looking action figure, and how many times can you have the same Venom looking action figure? Hot Toys has got to be like, dude, we got to change it up somehow. A movie Venom with the spider symbol on the chest that shoots webs, that'll sell like motherfucking hotcakes. Regardless, the upcoming Spider-Man game, the Sony PS5 Spider-Man game that's a sequel to the PS4 game, I got a PS5 remaster, but still, that game's going to have Venom. If I had to place my bets, I would say that's probably going to be a better telling of Spider-Man meets Venom than what one of the movies can do. Plus, it's Tony Todd voicing Venom. Come on, perfect. But I would be more excited if I didn't feel like it'd be more of the Odd Couple with a parasite, and then, all right, throwing Spider-Man into the mix, and more Odd Couple with a parasite. It was a fun surprise for the first movie, but we just got more of that with Carnage, and I wasn't fulfilled. In my review of this movie, I said there are some novels that I've read that are much more graphic. I wasn't necessarily talking about graphic novels. I was talking about novels. Allow me. This is from Goblin's Revenge, which does have Carnage in it. The book that's the predecessor to this one's called Carnage in New York, and there he ravages a whole penthouse full of people. But there's this one excerpt that always it stood out to me, and I'll read it for you here. I hate reading. I jumble words and letters around, and I always hate it when the teacher was like, Jeremy, read in front of the class. I'd be like, yeah, fuck you too, but thank you. Let's embarrass myself today, but I'll try my best. Here we go. The setup is Carnage gets onto a plane. He tried to go in as Cletus Cassidy, got sniffed out, and then boom, turns into Carnage, talks to the captain. He's like, get us in the air. Captain's like, I can't without clearance. So here's what Carnage does. After leaving the cockpit, the aisles were crowded with panicked people all rushing to get out of the door. Everyone sit down, Carnage shouted. He waited a moment, then walked towards the door, brushing people aside like so much dust. Bodies tumbled over seats and smashed into one another. One man in a gray sweater couldn't get out of the way quickly enough. Carnage picked him up by the head and yanked. Blood spurted everywhere. Carnage held the head up and looked at the bloody, shocked face as the man's headless body fell into the sitting position in his seat. Around the body, people were choking and throwing up, most of them unable to look away. This should do fine, Carnage said, carrying the head by the hair like it was a suitcase. He moved to the entrance of the plane and walked a few feet up the jetway to the corner. There he could see the police at the top where he gave the flight attendant his ticket. The last of the passengers to get out were just clearing the door up top. Carnage waited until only the police were visible and then shouted, "If this jet is not pushed back in 5 minutes, I'll bring you another one of these!" Like a bowling ball, he hurled the head up the jetway. It rolled like a football, bumping and spinning in odd ways until it smashed with a sickening thump into the wall near the door up top. "Strike!" Carnage said, laughing. "I forgot how much fun bowling can be." Still laughing, he moved back into the plane. "Close that door now," he said to the flight attendant close by. He stood and watched while she did what she was told. "Prepare to take off. I imagine we'll be leaving soon." There's nothing like that in this movie. There are no moments of sickeningly, horrifically violent murder, in which Carnage is killing with such gleeful, playful joy, and you feel bad about even watching it, where you're like, dude, this maniac needs to be stopped. So I left the movie feeling unfulfilled. Well, if it weren't for the mid-credit scene that was actually really sweet with implication and possibility, but I've seen movies that give you the hope and possibility of what's to come, only to not really stick the landing of it. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to see Spider-Man and Venom clash. Then again, I wanted to see Venom and Carnage clash. It's all about how they executed. If for nothing else, maybe Venom will get a more comic accurate suit out of the whole thing. All right, so Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and that mid-credit scene, have you seen it? What do you think about it? What do you think's coming? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.